Welcome to this episode of my video essay. This is the introduction to this whole essay. Before we start, let me just say something about a certain benefit that comes from studying philosophy. I think the best thing that it has taught me, having some studies in it, is that it teaches you to look at things, phenomena, from the fresh perspective. Perspective that sometimes, when you have the realization of what you're looking at or what you're hearing, it can be shocking, it can look strange, it can be endearing, whatever the effect is. But it just teaches you to look at things, phenomena, from the perspective of almost similar than what would be the same that, you're a little green man who comes from another star system and you look at some of the things that men do on this planet from a completely fresh perspective. So it's like seeing everything in its freshness, in its oddness, and sometimes even its effed upness. I think that's the best thing that having studies in philosophy teaches you. And that actually is the kind of attitude that I hope you will have when you start going through these things with me. So, because here also we have another, you could almost call it a training exercise on how to look at things from a fresh perspective, or look at certain things from a perspective of newness, looking at them from a perspective like someone who wouldn't have known anything about them before would look at them when they see them for the first time. And the phenomena that we're talking about in this essay are, firstly, that there seems to be a somewhat established way of doing what is in our world called the Western liberal democracies. There are election cycles, campaigns, political agendas, party leaders debating on your TV, etc., etc. Left-wing politicians are in power, right-wing politicians are in power. And nowadays more and more also even the possibility of ultra-right populist or authoritarian or even new fascist parties having the biggest amount of votes. This is the matrix of present-day politics. And when I say matrix, I refer to the cultural, social and political conditions that create the framework of what can be said, implemented and administrated politically, or how it happens, how this discourse goes about, how the political actions are taken, how they are implemented, and how the whole process of making legislation is later on administered and monitored. And the thing here, of course, is that there always is something that falls outside of this matrix, something almost self-evident, clear and pristine, a truth we have neglected or actively forgotten. The same thing can be said about the present day sciences. They go about doing their thing, and occasionally we hear about this and that finding or scientific discovery from the news, but mostly they stay beneath the surface of us knowing what they're doing, minding their own businesses and getting on with it. And you heard this news. It could be a breakthrough in the technologies that relate to creating fusion energy. It could be some sort of a new estimate of the age of our universe, our cosmos, that we got the time scale wrong. These are just examples. I'm just bringing some examples that are fairly recent. So, like what I said about the politics, this is the framework or matrix for us, for present day sciences, how we assume it should be for us. And this essay is really about these two phenomena of the human world, about their past, their presence, and what their future could be, what their relationship has been, what it is now, and what it could be in the future. Over the course of refining this essay and deciding what I express and what I don't express, I have played quite a lot with the idea about what will be the name of the whole essay, video essay. And during this process of going through the material over and over again, no matter how much I tried to find other alternatives for giving a title for this essay, there was a certain concept that just kept on resurfacing and refused to go away. I first tried to resist it, but then I just thought that, okay, if this concept comes back to haunt me over and over again, maybe I should just embrace it. And this concept is the concept of manifesto. And indeed, like political or cultural manifestos always are, it's a statement of intention from my part. But the reason I stuck to this concept in the end, when it persisted and insisted, notice me, there's something in me that fits into what you try to do, is that it was, I didn't care about, whether I pay homage to the history of various revolutionary manifestos, whether they are cultural manifestos or political manifestos. The reason why I decided to stick with this concept is that it is related to another concept, which is manifest. And manifest refers to something that is clear and obvious to our mind and our senses. And also this concept manifested, it has an etymology, which is referring to something plenty at hand. Not going too deep into certain phenomenological ways of thinking that I know, but one of the first things when we are in the world and the world appears to us as phenomena is that there's plenty of things at hand. Now the issue is that how much we are able to see the things that are within our hands, plenty within our hands, within our reach, how much we are able to actually see through their being handy, their true essence, because as soon as we start to ponder their true essence, we can have a deeper understanding of what actually is within hands. In the final instant, in the final pages or final videos of this video essay, indeed this will become a manifesto of science-based policies, even a manifesto of a political movement, a manifesto of a party of scientific management of societies. But all these determinations are only valuable at the end of this essay if before that I'm able to point out something so obvious, something so clear about the relationship between liberal democracies and the modern sciences that the outcome indeed can be nothing else, no other than the above mentioned manifesto. What then are the central themes that we will be going through while we try to get to our manifesto? I now will be skimming through some of the central themes. The first thing that we will be going into is how has democracy been? How was it in ancient Greece? How was democracy during the 10-year period of French Revolution? How was democracy in some of the formulations that were added to the United States Declaration of Independence and consequently a few years later on in the United States Constitution? How shaky or sturdy the reign of democracy has been over the centuries. One of the key concepts that I will mention is the concept that has recently been used quite a lot in political philosophy and political sciences. And this is the concept of democratic backsliding and or democratic erosion. But more of that then when the time is right to introduce these concepts. Basically, the idea behind both of these concepts is that there are a perfectly healthy democracy could at some point face a situation where there are forces that are in power that systematically start to erode this and that small thing that makes a Western liberal democracy what it is. And before the populace of a nation realizes they gone into a perilous situation where the whole continuation of democratic traditions have been called into question. Another thing that we will be going through, or we will be dwelling on, is the question of how much the French Revolution was informed by Enlightenment ideas. And these Enlightenment ideas were actually first, before they became the thing of the people, ordinary people, they were first introduced to the societal discourse by the elites, which meant at that time nobility. The basic idea was the rational governing of society. And once the French Revolution or the Bourgeois Revolution happened, these ideas were developed into something much more complex. And another thing that we will be going through is that modern sciences and the rationality behind Enlightenment ideas seem to have the same common root of very fundamental philosophical ideas. And here I'm referring to some really major philosophical figures of the 17th century, namely René Descartes and Francis Bacon. In the case of Descartes and Leibniz, these philosophers or thinkers ushered in the new era, a new era of rationality and of deductive reasoning, whereas Francis Bacon emphasized the importance of experimental, evidence-based sciences as a basis for true scientific advancements. And when we think about Enlightenment ideas, in a way you could say that these ideas are sort of more like muddled takes on the idea of basic rationality than what was later established in modern sciences. Another way that you could describe them, that the way that the discourse of rationality was talked in the Enlightenment ideas had more like artistic freedom in it than what was inevitable in the discourse inside the sciences. And this leads us to the question, is that how much we can say that these Enlightenment ideas are like art, or maybe there is something similar in them, to be even more, daring. Maybe there is something similar in these Enlightenment ideas than what there is in religion. And, as funny as this may seem, when you just spew it out, but there is actually some grounds for stating that there seems to be closer connection between religion and Enlightenment ideas than we first think there is. Because during the time of French Revolution, there was actually an attempt to replace the Catholic Church and its religious beliefs with a new cult of reason. Relating to this, there is one concept that really comes in handy, and that concept is pseudoscience. I first heard this concept when I was watching this BBC documentary, I think it's The History of the World, and the presenter of the series, political commentator and journalist Andrew Moore, actually used this concept, pseudoscience, when he was talking about probably the darkest period of the last century, the first 50 years of the 20th century, especially in regards of how the idea of pseudoscience relates to communist ideologies and how it relates to fascist ideology. In my take on these pseudosciences of fascism and communism, I sort of like emphasize the fact that the seedlings of these forms of thinking were already visible in some of the things that appeared during the 10-year period of French Revolution. So to use this metaphor to the fullest, it's almost as if that fascism and communism, they are like full-grown plants, possibly with flowers and fruits and everything. And what we had at that time of the revolutionary era in France, the French Revolution, the Bourgeois Revolution, was the seedlings of same things that later became these complexes, or these systems of pseudoscience. After this one I will be going really into details of communist ideologies and fascist thinking, what they are made of, what is their essence. And after I've gone through that thing, I will introduce an idea of a concept of spectrum of democracy, especially in regards how these two anti-democratic thought forms, communist ideology and fascist ideology, how they stand in relation to this Enlightenment light of democracy. Finally, I say some critical notes about the actors in the present day Western political arena, whether they are politicians, think tanks, press, lobbyists, marketing agencies. I'm not going too much into this one here, but let's be poetic and polemic here. Let me just put this into your thinking cap as something that you can start to ponder about. Ponder about who are the present day oracles, divinators or middlemen of the God of rationality. After this one, I move the presentation to the history of looking at the history of modern sciences. I first start by just going through, in what order the modern sciences were born. And after that one, I sort of like go into what has defined their societal role for many, many, many years. And has there ever been any kind of like point when this societal role has seen a major shift? In my discourse, I also point out that there seems to be a deep paradox in how general public sees sciences. On the other hand, they are seen as something enormously powerful. And one of the, for instance, key power moments of science is the development of nuclear weapons at the end of the Second World War. So the general public, everyone knows how powerful science is and scientific advancements can be. But there are also another thing that I think is worth mentioning when you think about the relationship between sciences and the rest of the society, or the sciences and the politics. The story of sciences speaking truth to the power when it has been mediated by modern day politicians, the whole story is a bittersweet story, and there are definitely moments of uneasy in how science and politicians have interacted and are interacting even today. And the question, of course, is posed, what would be the role of scientific research be in political arena if there were not oracles and the middlemen of modern politicians standing between their propositions and political action. After this essay becomes much less of a thought exercise. After this one, it's almost like it becomes a vision board, brainstorming and a vision board of actual processes of this new kind of party. We just go through different kinds of things that we have to consider if we were to build this new kind of party. It's going through questions like, what kind of data protection we should have, what kind of web portal would be suitable for the party. It could be also useful to think about how would a single scientist, having an idea of how to do a single legislation and using this party to bring a policy statement to the party platform, how the process works of actually getting that scientific idea to become a policy statement in a party platform, and consequently possibly even legislation in the future if the party is part of some coalition. And after that one, I try to imagine what kinds of objections you could have to this vision of a new kind of party, and try to answer those objections before you actually make those objections. In the concluding pages, I will sort of lift my glance further high up and try to describe you how, in the long run, this introduction of this new kind of party is good, both for political processes in Western democracies, and it's good also for the scientific community. That we should see that there are benefits in building this kind of new party and political movement, that it will be beneficial for our systems of politics, and it will be also beneficial for the present-day sciences, that both of these parties will benefit from this new kind of political movement and political party. And after that one, like I already told in the previous video, I will be then opening the forum for discussion, and the conversation can move there. That's it. That's all for today. And like always, if you like what you see, please press that like button. And if you think that what I try to go through here is exciting, and you certainly want to see what will come next, you can always press that subscribe button, because that allows you to get an announcement that a new video has appeared. Both of these actions keep me in business and keep me invested in this YouTube channel, and I have already other ideas coming, ideas of other videos in my mind, and if this goes well, if you're interested, I will certainly do an investment of doing other types of video essays. But anyway, press the like button and or subscribe button. That's it. Have a nice night, morning, day, wherever in the world you are, and I see you in the next episode.